Vacation today. By the way, I'm Tom, finally on duty, I guess. I don't know if I'm even inducted yet, but I'm faking it. Again, while I was gone, our invocation this morning is by Father Joe Boisel.
There you go.
Nothing but the best. Look at that, springing his step.
Jim Aher thought I threw a chicken wing on him last week, but it wasn't me. I was called upon, and so I did. So in the mornings, I used to like to run in my neighborhood. Now I walk because I have this golden doodle puppy, and she wants to walk. She wants to walk quickly, but smell everything, check everything out. So we walk now through the neighborhood, and as I do, slowing down, I've noticed how much sometimes I would miss running, the beauty of the earth. And so there's this great prayer from the Book of Common Prayer for the beauty of the earth. Let's pray together. We give you thanks, most gracious God, for the beauty of earth, and sky, and sea, for the richness of mountains, plains, and rivers, for the wonder of your creatures, large and small, and for all the loveliness that surrounds us. We praise you for these good gifts and pray that we may safeguard them for our posterity. Grant that we may continue to grow in our grateful enjoyment of your abundant creation to the honor and glory of your name, now and forever. Amen.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. And may Jay Yard, would you step up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance in the four-way test? Yeah, let's see it. Let's see it. Looking good.
Thank you. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the things we think, say, and do. 1, is it the truth? 2, is it fair to all concerned? 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And 4, will it be all concerned? We had a fly on the screen. Did you see that?
There's a fly on the screen. Lots of critics. Lots of critics. Our former Sergeant of Arms handed me a slip of paper this morning reminding me that we have birthdays to celebrate. So in the month of July, we have Michael Lewis, July 1st. What is it? What's Michael's status? Is he like a maybe? No, never mind. All right. Yeah. And then myself, Tom Tobin, July 13th. Marilyn Orr, July 21st. Ed Sogan, July 25. July 25. And bringing up the end of the month, Jim Ahern, July 31st. So let's have a little song in honor of everybody's birthday. Follow me. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. And we also have a few anniversaries of a couple of folks, their Rotary anniversaries. So Elizabeth Ramsey, July 1st, 2006. So that's 18 years. And Lynn Zupp, 9 years. That was 2015. So happy anniversary to those folks. And with that being covered, I think I'm handing it over to our illustrious president, Kelly Brennan. Illustrious.
Good morning. I'm actually going to step down here. This is a task that had not been completed because we were roaming around. Whoop. Hang on. Hang on. Here we go. So we have an award that we need to give out today Usually I think we do this at the June dinner meeting, but people go in 52 different directions. And so I apologize. Here we sit on the 24th and we're just getting around to it. I don't know much about the award, to be honest, but I know a fair amount about the person with whom the award was named for, and that's the Jimmy Suffin Award. James Hoynes Suffin. Did you ever hear Jimmy tell you his middle name? Well, now you know why. So most of us know Jimmy. Jimmy was also known as Inky Jim because he was in the printing industry. His father owned a printing company. He worked for that company, became president, I think, in the late 60s. He retired in the mid 80s. Didn't really retire because he went on to be an executive director for was the National Printing Association. But we know Jimmy as Santa on the Green, and I think he might have been Santa a few different times. We know him as Uncle Sam because he would come to the Memorial Day parade dressed as Uncle Sam. We knew he was involved in everything. I think he certainly was our past president. He probably had a number of different officer roles. Jimmy was everywhere. And Jimmy was involved in just about everything I could think of. And in fact, so involved that once he told me of a time he went to Columbus, and it was during a year we had an Olympic here in the States, and he went to go get the torch to carry it, and he ran a mile with the torch and then handed it off to whoever the next individual was. So Jimmy had been around a long time and had influenced this group greatly. Jimmy used to carry little notepad. I don't know what he wrote in it, but he would write a bunch of stuff. But it wasn't so much the notepad, it was his filing system. And had a 1970s style filing system, his database, which was all paper. And he had literally, he could pull things out that were appropriate for the moment. How he would find this stuff, whether it was a cartoon, whether it was a writing, an article, whatever it was, Jimmy had it. So what we remember Jimmy more as is he would always come to these meetings with tons of paper to hand out to people indiscriminately. That's Jimmy. So Jimmy passed away about a decade ago, and I went to his funeral, and there was a gentleman there, don't know who he was, who was doing a eulogy for Jimmy. And I think this eulogy best describes the award in which I'm going to give out. And it was, when you're joyful, when you say yes to life and have fun and project positivity all around you, you become a sun at the center of every constellation, and people just want to be near you. And so with that, I humbly and with great honor want to present this year's 2024 Jimmy Suffin Award to Marilyn Orr. Marilyn?
Oh my gosh. You know, I wasn't at the dinner. Uh, the reason I wasn't at the dinner was because I was whitewater rafting with my 13-year-old granddaughter at Ohio Pile at the suggestion of Jay Yard. Nonetheless,
That sound like a Jimmy Suffin thing?
it was great fun. It was the first time I'd ever gone. But, you know, I didn't know Jimmy, but I can tell you, I feel like I do know Jimmy because of the people here who've told me about him. And I remember when we started making this an annual thing with our club in the year of COVID. And so I asked several people to tell me who he was and what he was. And every single person, to a person, got the biggest smile on their face in remembrance. And it's just a wonderful thing. Thank you very much. I truly appreciate this. Oh my goodness.
Thank you. I will turn it over to Jim to introduce our guest.
Thank you. One word on Jimmy Setvin. He was with Hudson Job Search for about 4 years when I was there, and he was awesome, and I got to know him well, both here at Rotary and during Hudson Job Search and at church, and he was everywhere. I went to the same service, and when I got home, and I still have it right above my screen, my computer. It says "Be Jimmy Setvin." It's still there. I'll never be Jimmy Setvin. I'd love to be, but I'm not. And I can't be a Tom Speaks either. I was going to try to really enhance his talk and come in a toga, but I thought maybe he was going to come in a toga, but he didn't, darn it. So I've known Tom kind of for a number of years, and a little bit about Tom is he's an author, philosophical seeker. I'd like to talk about that. Historian, fitness diehard, professional speaker, appreciation advocate, and published author. Hannibal, we heard him talk about Hannibal a couple of years back. And Lynn, Dying Pride Meets Living Wisdom. I read it. It's, I don't know, 3-hour, 4-hour read maybe. And it's awesome. I'll lend it to anybody if you want to read it. It's well worth it. And Appreciology, the art and science of appreciation, all available on Amazon. Tom is also a husband, a father, and a Hudson resident and business owner of the Impact Group. So I decided not to wear a toga. I do want to put a plug for, I should have started this way, about that this is History Month, and this goes back 2,000 years. We went back over 200 years with Tom Vince last week. Next week, please show up. A little bit different. We're going to have, I did an interview with a woman that lives here. And just to give you, she was raised in Amsterdam, and she was 4 or 5 years old when the Germans came there, and her mother was a leader in the community, and she became a resistance leader. And she and her sister spent 2 years in prison while they were trying to get information out of her mother. So you can imagine how that, she's heck of a person. So please come and listen to her. She was a little intimidated by she came to see how big the group was last week when Tom Vince was here. We had like 60 people, standing room only. And she was like, oh, I can't do this. But she did a great job in her own apartment. So Tom, it's all yours.
Appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. This is always so fun. I spend most of my time talking about marketing and different campaigns. So actually to get to talk about Roman history is the coolest thing ever. I'm going to ask you something. What does it mean to cross the Rubicon? And you got it. What does it mean when somebody says, I mean, there's a Jeep named the Rubicon, for gosh sake. So when somebody says, and right now, and somebody says, you just crossed the Rubicon, man, what does that mean? You can't go back. You have done something. There is no coming back. I mean, what month is this right now? Why is it July? Julius Caesar, for Pete's sakes. What was the old royalty of Russia? A czar. A czar comes from Caesar. What was the royalty of Germany? Kaiser. I mean, this is in our vernacular. When you have a fresh, tangy salad, it's a Caesar salad. I mean, Caesar, he's in our vocabulary right now. Why is this? This very much shaped our modern world. So I've got you guys, is there a clock in here anymore? You just kind of keep me going. So, because this is something that this could be a 10-hour lecture. So I'm going to take everything down to 45 minutes. Okay. So Julius Caesar, who was Julius Caesar? In a matter of opinion, was he a conqueror? Did he commit genocide? Was he a horrible opportunist? Was he, I mean, there are many ways to look at this character. I mean, in a lot of ways, very seedy, certainly a genius. But let's talk about Gaius Julius Caesar. Back in the day, you know Roman royalty because they have three names. Gaius Julius Caesar. Gaius, the first name, the Romans weren't very creative. Gaius, Sextus, Oxus, there's a couple different names you have. The second name is your that's your name. That is where that's your family branch, right? It's very important. He was from the Julian clan. They claim which came all the way back from Venus. That's pretty cool to have a god as your ancestor, right? And then Gaius Julius Caesar. Caesar is a branch of that name. So Romans were very, very aware of their history, and the aristocracy was fiercely competitive. I mean, fiercely competitive. They did whatever they could to be at the top of the food chain. Now, Rome was a republic. When we think of Rome, we think of Caligula, we think of Nero, we think of the emperors. That's all true, but that's after Julius Caesar. It was a republic. And in a republic, you had elected offices and the rest. And the highest of the food chain was something called a consul. A consul was essentially like their president, their chief executive. There were always two consuls because they were absolutely paranoid of someone having too much power. These two consuls were elected each year, and they would kind of balance each other in power. Now, so you're trying your entire life, you would do these different positions to get up to be a consul. Here's why. Rome there was royalty. And way back in the 700s, Brutus, the first Brutus, killed Tarquin was a king. They got rid of kings. They hated kings. They wanted a republic. And that's a very important concept as we go forward. The Romans despised the idea of a king. They despised the idea of a tyranny. They wanted this republic. Okay, so Gaius Julius Caesar, he comes from this long family. At 16, his father dies. At 16, his father dies, and he now becomes the head of the family. Things are beginning to roll from him as a young man, but there's a civil war underway. At that time, there were two big leaders in Rome. There was Gaius Marius and Sulla. I'm going to throw a lot at you guys here. Guys, and when we talk about a lot of this, think about right now in the United States. I mean, just as I'm talking about some of these events, about the end of the Roman Republic, think about some of the stuff, wherever you are in the political spectrum, there is some weird similarities going on. You've got a civil war going on right now in Rome. There's Gaius Marius, who was consul, Sulla, who was his lieutenant. There is a bit of a war. There are factions for each. That's a whole story in itself, but Sulla wins. Gaius Marius was Caesar's uncle. When Sulla wins this war, he wins by marching his army into Rome. That had never happened. A Roman general is not allowed to bring their army into Rome. Can't do it. He broke that precedent. When you break precedents, bad things happen. All of a sudden, everybody starts bringing their armies into Rome. So Sulla brings the army into Rome, and they launch something called a prescription. A prescription back in the day, what that meant is my political enemies, I literally put a list on the town hall that says anybody that kills any of them gets a bonus, and then their property gets taken by the state and auctioned off. Holy moly. I mean, that's legit how it went down. So think about when political things go really sideways. I mean, things get dicey. So Sulla has these prescriptions. People are anybody that was with Gaius Marius on that side is getting wiped out. Julius Caesar says, I am getting out of Dodge, man. It is not safe here. He joins the army and goes to fight in what was now Turkey, was then like the Asia Minor area. So he just gets out of there to try to be safe. So Julius Caesar is serving in the Turkish area for a while. He really distinguishes himself as a young man, actually gets something called a civic crown. He saves another Roman in a difficult circumstance, a very high honor as a young man. Sulla eventually passes away. Caesar's able to come back to Rome now. Caesar comes back to Rome. Things are beginning to stabilize, and Caesar begins to now advance in his political career. He's trying to rebuild his family. They came from a wealthy area. He's now got nothing. He comes home, and Sulla and that faction took all of his stuff. took his money, took his estates, they took it all. So he's got nothing. He comes back, but he's got his name. He's a very talented lawyer. He comes back and he begins to argue cases before the Senate. He begins to make a name for himself. So he's making a name for himself. He's getting more and more influential, and things begin to, he gets elected to the smaller role, edile, some others. He begins to advance. But there's a big opportunity for him. He wants to be Pontifex Maximus. And this, we think about our Pope, the Pontiff. Where's Father? The Pontiff, the Pontifex Maximus, that was the chief religious figure in Rome. Now, Caesar, fiercely ambitious. Isn't time? He is like, just if you want to understand Caesar, it is ambition to the point I will do anything at any time to anyone to advance myself. One of the most ruthlessly ambitious people ever. He wants to be Pontifex Maximus, but he's the junior person. Other people want to do this. And in Rome, is this familiar? You have to have a lot of money to get elected, a ton of money. You get elected and you're bribing everybody, and you're making sure the right pockets are filled, and you're just bribing the heck out of everybody. So democracy, I don't know, but that's how it rolled. Okay, so he finds an ally named Crassus. These are all important names. So Crassus, you're going to hear this one again. Crassus is the wealthiest guy in Rome. And he says to Crassus, loan me a ton of money, and I promise you later on, I got your back. Crassus says, okay, loans Caesar a crazy amount of money. Caesar bribes everybody, and he becomes Pontifex Maximus. Okay, and actually, as Caesar's going to the election day of Pontifex Maximus, he famously said to his mother, who was still alive, I'm either going to come back as Pontifex Maximus, or I'm not coming back at all, because I am so in debt that I'm done. What Julius Caesar also, to understand, it was constantly a throw of the dice. He always went for the absolute maximum, always. So he's going for this. He wins. Okay, so he's now Pontifex Maximus. He can begin to pay people back. He's also beginning now to get more and more authority. He becomes a proconsul, which means there's different areas. He gets sent off to Spain for a couple of years to rule in Spain. He goes to Spain. He has some military conquest. Famously, as he's on his way out to Spain, he passes this tiny little village. And it's this squalid little village. And somebody says to him, would you ever be, can you imagine living here? And he says, I would rather be first man in this squalid little village than second man in Rome. I gotta, and on his way also, there's a bust of Alexander the Great. And he said that he wept when he saw this, because Alexander the Great was 33. Caesar was 33 at this point. And he wept because Caesar hadn't accomplished anything yet. And it compared to Alexander, I mean, he's Pontifex Maximus, for gosh sakes. He's leading all the armies in Spain, and he's accomplished nothing. Goes off to Spain. He does his thing. He conquers a bit. He comes back. Now he wants to be consul. There's a ton of stuff going on in the background, but he now wants to be consul. While all this is happening, take back a little bit, there's someone named Pompeius Magnus. Had Julius Caesar never been born, you would all know the name Pompey, because he was the general. He was the guy. I mean, he was so take some steps back now when Sulla was around, because they're big names here, Pompey, Crassus, and Caesar. But let's go back a little bit. Sulla, if you remember, Sulla was the dictator, and he was terrible, terrible. A young man named Pompey decided, he's like 22. He raised an army. Why not? So he raises an army. He's just conquering and doing everything. And he becomes one of Sulla's chief lieutenants. He actually comes to Rome, and Sulla there's heads on pikes everywhere. Sulla's wiping everybody out. And this young Pompey has the right to say, or says to Sulla, he's standing in front of him. And Sulla is saying something, and Pompey, he's this cocky guy. He says that people worship the rising sun more than the setting sun, because Sulla is setting and he's old. Like, what guts? This guy is having people massacred. So this is Pompey the Great, right? So Pompey, he's conquered a bunch of stuff, and he becomes a very, very powerful figure. While Caesar is in Spain and such, there's something called Spartacus. Because there's 1,000 different pieces coming together. Spartacus was a Thracian. He was a gladiator. And the Spartacus Wars, I think, were very interestingly been called like the only just war. Do with that what you want, but historians have called it the only. They had these gladiators. It sounds all cool in the movies. It was awful. You were taken as a slave. You were auctioned off. You were put in these places, and some of the gladiators were but most of them were just carnage. It was a horrible, horrible, horrible life. So Spartacus led a revolution. And I should say, and there's a huge breakout. Thousands and thousands of slaves begin to gather. Understand how terrifying this was for Rome. About half of the population are slaves. Holy smokes. I mean, if you all of a sudden now you have this entire thing coming up that their society was broken up, and they would, as they conquered, they would take whole villages and those people would become slaves. So it's very terrifying. Anyway, Spartacus has his revolution. They're beginning that Roman army after Roman army is destroyed by the gladiators. Crassus defeats Spartacus's army, and he's pretty excited because he's not only is he a wealthy guy, he also wants to be the guy who's gonna be a military commander. So he destroys the Spartacus's army, but there's one little band which got away, and they're off in the woods. Pompey comes in at the last minute, defeats that band, goes to Rome and said, "I beat Spartacus. It's me," because remember, he's cocky. "I'm the guy that beat Spartacus." And by the time Crassus gets to Rome, everybody has celebrated Pompey for beating Spartacus. And it really upsets them. They now hate each other. And this is important. Crassus, wealthiest guy in Rome, Pompey, the biggest general in Rome, hate each other. And you know how Crassus, one of the ways he made all of his money? This is crazy. There was no fire department in Rome. He got a bunch of slaves and he made his own fire department. This is honest to God, this is what he would do. There's a fire coming. You have your multi-million-dollar estate. He comes and looks at his fire with his fire crew and says, "You know what? Because there's no fire department. Your house is going to get burnt down. I'll tell you what, I'll give you 10% of your house worth. I'll buy it right now because in about 10 minutes, it's going to be worth nothing." And they were like, people would buy it. He bought up huge swaths of Rome by saying, "Look, man," so he bought, at the pennies of the dollar of these estates. It was crazy. A massively wealthy guy, and obviously pretty unscrupulous, right? So you got these two people. So now those are going. So now Caesar comes back now. Go ahead again. Caesar is coming back now from Spain. And now what he now wants to be consul. Now, what we have here is Pompey has come back. Pompey needs legislation passed for all of his soldiers to get land. Okay, Crassus needs a big tax break for the people that he's lended money from. Any of this sound familiar? So he needs this huge tax break, but there are people in the Senate who are standing in the way of this. There are people like Cato, the Cato Institute, other things you hear about. There are people that are diehard. They will not bend to Crassus or to Pompey or whoever. They won't do it. So they need someone to come in. So Caesar, these two hate each other. Caesar comes in and says, "Pompey, Crassus, this is nuts. I know you hate each other, but together, the three of us, we can rule the school. Nobody can stand in our way." They're like, this sounds good. So the first triumvirate is born. He says, "Make me consul." So Caesar gets elected to consul with their support. And now he is jamming through legislation to make sure that Pompey's men get their land and that Crassus gets his tax breaks. But here's the thing, and this is when Caesar begins to really show his colors. The Senate doesn't want to go with it. The Senate doesn't want to go this way. So Caesar, in many ways, is a thug. Senators are beaten up in the street. His men are going into homes, thrashing people, threatening, doing whatever they can. He ends up remember, there's a co-consul? There's a consul and a co-consul. Caesar was a co-consul. A guy named Biblius was his co-consul. Biblius was trying to speak against him. True story. Caesar had a bucket of dung, poop, poured over Biblius's head in public, had him beaten. Biblius spent the entire year in his own home, besieged by thugs. People would joke that instead of the consulship, it'd be the consulship of name and name. Instead of the consulship of Caesar and Biblius, the joke was it was the consulship of Julius and Caesar, because he was the only one there. Because, I mean, it's kind of funny, but by thuggery, he intimidated the his lawful counterbalance to not even literally coming out of his home. So for that whole year now, Caesar is beating people down to make this happen. Now Crassus and Pompey, they get what they want. So now Caesar's term is coming up. And now what Caesar needs to do is he needs to be careful because he wants to be consul again, but you can't be consul for 10 years. So now what he needs to do, he needs to have protection. When you're a consul or a proconsul, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, you're sacrosanct. You can't be taken to task for any crimes you've done. And he's committed a lot of crimes against some very powerful people. I mean, he had Cicero. Remember, see, he had Cicero. What do you call when you send somebody away? He had Cicero exiled. Cato these are hugely powerful people that he has alienated everybody for his enemies. So he says, I need protection. Only way to have protection is to be a proconsul. So he has the present people assign him to be the proconsul of Gaul. So after you become the consul, you get to go rule a territory. Why is this important? Because you steal everything you possibly can from the inhabitants of the people you go to rule. It is the most stinking unethical thing. The way the Romans used to roll, I mean, honestly, what you would do is let's say there's a Croatia. Okay, Croatia, it goes up for bid. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to put together a joint stock company, and I'm making this up now. We'll bid $10 million to have the right to rule Croatia. We get this joint stock company. We then create this. We then go out to rule it. The idea is we're incentive to take as much money from the local population as we can. Anything over $10 million is profit. Does that make sense? So you take every dime you possibly can while being careful, because if you push too much, people revolt. So you want to have them in absolute total squalor just till they don't revolt. It's insane. This is the mentality. So Caesar goes off to Gaul. Now, Gaul, what's interesting, when we think of the Roman Empire, you think of the empire. It wasn't that way. When Caesar was in his day, you have Spain. Gaul was not a part of it. Gaul, which is France, Italy, some parts of Greece. It really expanded after Julius Caesar. Here's the thing. When he wants to go to Gaul, and frankly, for Pompey and for Crassus, that's the best thing ever. I mean, Gaul, Caesar, go get yourself killed because Gaul is crazy. There's nothing but a bunch of forests and crazy. I mean, Gaul, people were terrified of Gaul. The Gauls sacked Rome in like 312. They marched on Rome and they actually occupied Rome. Famously, the Gaul king, when they were weighing out gold as to they're going to pay it off, and the Gaul king back in 312, it wasn't fair, and the Gaul king put his sword on the scale to pitch it down. And essentially, the Romans are saying that's not fair. And the famous vivice, woe to the conquered. If you're conquered, man, you got no say. And think about that in our current world as well. It's you're woe to the conquered. So Romans have a deep fear of Gaul, of the Gaul people. Okay, so Caesar says, you know what? So his consulship is over. I'm going to go to Gaul. This is where, and they're like, great, man. Again, go get yourself killed. Super. But Caesar knows he's been consul, but if that's the sky's the limit, man. He wants it all. So he goes to Gaul. Well, the main reason was he needs to be sacrosanct from the law. And also he's looking for money. He is in debt. He is in debt, crazy apocalyptic debt. He needs to make money. So he goes to Gaul. Okay, so he goes to Gaul, and what he needs to do is he needs to pick a war. He doesn't want, so he goes to Gaul, and really there's about 1 million people living, they're fighting like crazy amongst each other. And think of Gaul not as a country, but almost like Native Americans. Were Native American just a bunch of different tribes that had different, loosely allied, but not really, and they're kind of all over. And Gaul was beginning to become a nation. Had Caesar not been there another 50, 100 years, they would have coalesced and they would have been a powerful, powerful force. But so Caesar goes there, and what he sees is that there are tribes on the move. One tribe is moving to the next, different things are happening, and he decides that he needs to intervene for the good of Rome. He really didn't have to, but he's like, this is an excuse to invade. So he invades, he wins one battle after another. And he's what he did here in Gaul, which is fascinating, is you've heard divide and conquer. Had the people of Gaul gotten together and said, this is a bad thing, let's go, Caesar wouldn't have had a chance. He has a couple legions. A legion's 5,000 men. He has 4 or 5 legions. He's got 25,000 guys. With 25,000 guys, he's going to invade 1,000,000 strong, and they are fierce. The only way he can possibly do it is to make an alliance and pit A against B, and then after B is destroyed, pit B against C. And he's an absolute master at pitting greed against greed. And just one after another, he goes and he's destroying these different tribes. At one point, so he's destroying these different tribes, and different things are happening one at a time. And these are massive battles. I mean, these are thousands and thousands of people, and just, I mean, they're raising villages and just everything. The dogs of war. Bad things are happening throughout. Many people consider this a genocide. I mean, over 1,000,000 Gauls were killed in this process. 1,000,000. I mean, you wrap your mind around that. It was just absolutely brutal. I don't think the Western mind is going different things. So at one point, there's a German that comes over the Rhine, area of Istus, and now the Germans are now invading. Germans have a way of invading France. You ever notice that? They've been doing it for a long time. So the Germans are now they're invading France, and Caesar he needs to stop this. So the Germans are now coming, and he finds, one of the funny stories is his men. He finds that they're all the Germans are coming, and he's always very, very astute with his men. All of his men are making out wills. He's like, what are you guys doing? He said, they're eating lentils, which is funeral food, all the rest. Like, what are you guys doing? He says, well, the Germans are coming. Have you seen these Germans? They're like, I mean, we Italians are like 5'5". These dudes are 6'2". They got big beer bellies. They got hair and the helmets, and they're, oh my God. So Caesar, they were terrified. So Caesar, he calms them down. He says, this is nothing. So he goes, they defeat one tribe, and then he did one of the most remarkable things. The Rhine River. Anybody have seen the Rhine? It's a big river, right? It's a swift flowing river. When the Germans would cross the river, it would take 25, 30 days in boats to go. To show the Roman might, Caesar, he built a bridge across that thing in like 6 days. It's fascinating. Building a bridge out with wooden tools, saws, and axes. They built these floats with huge pounders, and they pounded in pilings all the way across the Rhine. They built that bridge, and he sent legions over just to show the Germans, don't mess with us. We can come and go as we please. He went over. Germans were freaked out. They retreated. He made his point. He came back across. Just fascinating. I mean, over and over, his troops did things that were just, when Sherman invaded the South in the Civil War, his men were, you remember, they kind of went off on their own for some time in the middle of the South. His troops were compared to Caesar's troops because no obstacle could stop them, no whatever else. They would ford any river, they'd build anyway, they would just go. So engineering was a huge thing. So Caesar, there's a bunch of these things he's conquering. While he's doing that, he decides, you know what, I'm going to invade Britain. Why not? So, I mean, he does these different. He's doing like 3 or 4 of these campaigns per year. Britain then it was just this thing in lore. No one had any idea. There was an idea that there was an island. I mean, honest to God, they didn't know what it was. So he says, you know what? Let's invade Britain. So he gets his troops together. They go across, and the Britons they won't even let them land. The Britons, they have chariots, and their faces are all painted blue, and they are fierce fighters. Caesar's fleet gets destroyed by the weather. He builds a new fleet. He leaves. He comes back a year later, conquers some more. What's important about all this? Julius Caesar was a masterful propagandist. Have you guys ever heard of the commentaries? This is something, if you ever want to read, Caesar wrote 2 books, many others, but one is the Civil War, and the other one is the Gaul War. Julius Caesar wrote these books, and this is the brilliant part. As he's doing all of these things, he's sending them back to Rome. And there are people on street corners that are talking about him invading Rome and talking about him beating the Germans and talking about him putting a bridge across the river. This is all written in the third person. He wrote it. Julius Caesar did that. Julius Caesar conquered this person. Julius Caesar did whatever else. It's genius. One of the things that is problematic, though, is that a lot of this history has a single source, which was Julius Caesar. That's like having that's dangerous, right? So, I mean, a lot of these things, we kind of have some background information, but who the heck knows? All we know is that he was absolutely a propaganda machine, right? Famously, Winston Churchill, after World War II, leader of England, somebody said, do you think history will be kind with you? He said, absolutely. They said, how come? He said, because I intend to write it. And Julia and Churchill put together like a 6-volume history of the Civil War, which was published like a year after the war. I mean, he was able to frame the debate on that war because he wrote it first. So Caesar wrote all this stuff down. Okay, so Caesar, how am I doing on time, Tom? How much? When do I have to be? When do I have to be done? Okay, great. So now Caesar is now there. He's invaded Britain. He's doing his different things. Now, his time in Gaul is coming up. Now, while all this is happening, while he's conquering like crazy, here's something to think about as he's conquering. He's not the head magistrate. He's not a king. He's just a consul on his own authority conquering. Nobody has told him to do this. He has no authority to do any of this. While this is happening, he has agents in Rome who he is keeping track of to make sure that his back is covered because Crassus and Pompey hate his guts. So he is keeping all of that in balance as it's happening. And as this is going on, an important event happens. Remember Crassus again, the richest man in Rome? He's really smarting at the fact, sure, he's rich. Sure, he's been consul, but he's not a military commander. He defeated Spartacus, but everybody thinks Pompey did it, so he's pissed. He's like, I got to get a leader. So he wants to invade Parthia. Parthia, like modern day Iran and such. They're way out there in the east, and they are tough. Don't mess with the Parthians. So Crassus is like, you know what? I'm gonna get my military glory. I'm gonna go. So Crassus, while Caesar is in Gaul, takes this huge army out into Parthia, and he trusts there is a native guide that he thinks is a good guy, and the native guide takes him out, and Crassus's men go like, shouldn't we go around the desert? Because it seems like going through the desert's a bad idea. But then the native guy's like, no, I know what we're doing. Don't worry about it. So they get halfway out in the middle of the desert, and the Crassus is like, hey, what happened to our guide? I don't know. He disappeared last night. It's weird. So they're in the middle of the desert. They're all starving and dying of thirst, and they get attacked by the Parthian army. It's a setup. Has anybody ever heard the term a Parthian shot? You guys ever heard this? If a Parthian shot is when if you're leaving a room, Tom, you and I are leaving a room, and as you and I have a difficult exchange, and as I'm leaving, over my shoulder, I give you a zinger, and then I leave it. As I'm leaving, you'll hear this now once in a while, a Parthian shot. It's when you're kind of an insult as you're leaving, but it's over the shoulder. Parthians were archers, and Romans were heavy infantry. So you're heavy infantry in the middle of the desert, you can't move very well, not good. Parthians were archers, and they were famous for, they would come in and they'd turn around as they retreated or seemingly retreated, they could turn all the way around in the saddle and fire with deadly accuracy. So you have an opponent that you're infantry. I can't grapple with you. You're decimating me from a distance. So anyhow, his whole army gets wiped out. He's greedy. So the Parthians, I always thought this was one of the most colorful executions ever. They hate him, so they strap him down, boil gold, molten gold, pry his mouth open, and pour it in his mouth. They're like, you greedy? Take that. So that's how they kill Crassus. So Crassus is now dead. So violent world, man. So Crassus is now dead. Now all of a sudden the triumvirate, which was keeping all this going, is now done. Okay, so now Julius Caesar is now out in Gaul, and Pompey is a very, very, very vain person. The idea of being second to anybody, he doesn't like it. And Caesar is remember, he's sending his commentaries. These are coming back. Everybody's talking about Julius Caesar, that Julius Caesar is the guy, and Pompey's like, no, I'm the guy. But Pompey hasn't had victories in a while, so Pompey's getting really jealous. People in the Senate hate Caesar. They hate Pompey, but they hate Caesar more. They woo Pompey to be the man, be the man of the people, gain popularity again by supporting the Senate. So they do. They do. And now Caesar is now in the breeze. Now Caesar wants to come back and to be consul again. Because if he goes from proconsul to consul, he can't be prosecuted. This is important. Again, politically, when people are being, when there are legal actions against someone, what lengths will someone go to do whatever they have to remain immune? It's fascinating, right? So Caesar's like, I'm in a pickle here. Because what Pompey and the senator is saying is your term in Gaul is up. Lay down your proconsulship and come on back to Rome. And Caesar says, are you out of your mind? Because if I do, you're going to prosecute me. You're going to exile, maybe kill me. Caesar says, I can't do that. So this negotiation goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it gets very, very heated. No one wants civil war, either to Caesar. Caesar goes out of his way. He does not want civil war, but he knows if he lays down it's called imperium. Imperium is when if he lays that down, he's cooked. So he brings his army to the Rubicon River. It's not much of a river. It's a stream really, but it is the demarcation between what was Gaul and what was Rome. And to cross, as stated in the back, to cross that stream with your army is a declaration of war on Rome. So Caesar he's at the stream and he doesn't know, he's deciding what to do. And famously, the die is cast. You guys have heard that? That's what that meaning, let's roll, let's go. He invades. He's like, there's nothing we can do. So he invades. And this is fascinating. He's got one legion, 5,000 dudes. He's invading Rome because he knows time is on his side. Pompey is trying to gather troops like crazy, but all of Pompey's troops are fresh. They're freshly conscripted. They hardly know what they're going to do. Think about war back then. War, I mean, now too, but it was a skill. I mean, you spent years developing these skills, and these veterans from Gaul, they've been in Gaul for 10 years. And they are as hard as core veterans as you will, and they're not to mention people in Rome are terrified of them. Soldiers in our modern world, a soldier is respected, and we really hold up until Napoleon's time, like before Napoleon's, soldiers were terrifying. You do not want soldiers anywhere near your village because they rape and they kill and it's bad. You have a bunch of brigands in your community, it's bad. So imagine Rome, and we've got these in their minds, these monsters that are coming back from Gaul, and they are pissed. I mean, that's not good. So they're coming back. And Caesar decides this is the first blitzkrieg. Let's go. Let's just go. He goes straight for Rome. Pompey panics. Actually, maybe decides what he has to do is he can't face Caesar with the troops he has. So he decides the only thing he can do is he actually abandons Rome and goes to Greece. Pompey had all of his conquests in the east. And back in the day, what you would do is when you conquered a country, their kings would pay you to make them a king, right? So the idea of think of King Herod of Judea. Herod, what they do is Herod, I want to be king of Judea. Cool. What I do is I give 500,000 silver pieces to the local Roman governor who then lets me be king of Judea. Okay. So they had all these people in the east. So Pompey has all this. He's like, I'm going to go east where my power base is. He goes. Caesar takes Rome. Hardly anybody in Rome because they're terrified. Sulla, they're thinking, holy smokes, when I take this, Caesar's going to lop off heads. It's going to be terrible. We don't know what happens. Also, famously, too, Pompey forgot to take the treasury of Rome with him. Then their haste to leave, they left all of Rome's gold in Rome, which Caesar's like, awesome, thank you. So that happened, right? So now Caesar is there. Pompey is now in the east, and Caesar has the political capital of being there. One of the things Caesar does is he gives clemency. He was famous. He's like, what happened, happened. We're moving on. This is nothing at all to do with he's a good human being, everything to do with power. And he was attempting to secure that power. So he's pardoning people like crazy. It's all right. We're going to do this. But I am now, he makes himself the head of the government. And there's a chase to go down to Brindisium, which is southern Italy, but Pompey escapes. Okay. Julius Caesar being Julius Caesar, instead of going after Pompey right away, think about the guts of this. He has his men, okay, I need you to build a fleet to get my troops from Italy to Greece. While I'm doing that, Pompey also had armies in Spain. He's like, I'm going to go take care of Pompey's armies in Spain. So he has defeated, so Pompey is led to Greece. Caesar has the guts. He marches, he can march to Spain in 49, marches to Spain and destroys one of Pompey's armies there. So I have an army in my back, I got to destroy it. So like in a quick, goes over there, destroys it. We think, you had to march thousands of men over hundreds of miles, over mountains, the logistics, the organization, it's crazy to think about. So he zips over there, defeats that army, comes on back. Now what he wants to do is he now needs to go to Greece. He goes to Greece. Pompey is over there. In the first major battle with Pompey, actually Pompey wins the battle. Caesar has to retreat. There's another battle is coming, but the Caesar's forces besiege Pompey, okay? They have him besieged. And Pompey really, he can hold off. I talked to you guys last year about how Romans build their fortifications. You can't get in them. You build a Roman fortification, you can't get in. Pompey is all sealed in, and the Roman, Caesar's guys are actually starving. They're actually, because they don't have the provisions. And one of the ways the Caesar's guys psych out the people inside, Caesar's guys are eating loaves made from roots. They're digging roots out of trees. I mean, it's awful. And Caesar's men with catapults shoot the bread they're eating into Pompey's and saying, this is what we will do. This is how dedicated we are to destroying you. And Pompey's guys are like, oh my God, who are we fighting? So there's another battle. Caesar wins the battle. Pompey's destroyed. Now Pompey, he escapes and he flees to Egypt. Okay, one of Pompey's, how am I doing on time? 3 minutes. Pompey goes to Egypt. He thinks he's going to have support there. The Egyptians cut off his head, literally put it on a platter. Caesar shows up and they say, here's a present, Caesar. So Caesar then begins that. Caesar goes back to, and I need to wrap up a lot of this. He then in rapid succession goes to the different areas of the empire, destroying all of the last opposition. He comes back to Rome. He makes himself dictator for 5 years. He's like, you know what? Let's make it for 10 years. And then after that, he says, hey, you know what? I'll be dictator for life. He becomes dictator for life. The other Roman senators, they don't dig this, because remember, the worst thing in the world is to have a king. And they believe that he is working to have a king. The whole other story, he has what a guy. He had a kid with Cleopatra, so Caesarion. So the Romans are afraid that he is going to create this empire with Egypt and this as an heir. So the Romans aren't happy. Senators get together, Ides of March, assassinate him. And they assassinate Caesar. One of the things he learned, history learned, is that clemency, all of those people that he had pardoned were the ones that killed him. What history learned from that is after him, Octavian, his successor, Augustus, killed every one of his opponents. He learned from that lesson that Octavian, who became Augustus, that's Caesar's heir, he had 2 lives. His first life was Octavian, brutal. After all the brutality was done, he's like, I'm going to change my name. I'll be Augustus. This is the good side. So that's what he did. But that was the lesson. If you have opposition, wipe it out to the last person. And he did. Founded the Roman Empire. Roman Empire lasted hundreds of years. To this day, when we hear Caesar is it's a symbol of power. It's a symbol of in a lot of ways, dignity. But with all history, it's all interpretation, right? Was this a good person? It certainly had a person that led a lasting influence on the world. But man, it's just fascinating. So thank you guys all for having me this morning. I'd be open to any questions if you have any about our friend Julius Caesar.
about burning the ships? Burning the ships and Rubicon. They couldn't burn the ships down, so they couldn't come back?
That's certainly applicable. I think that was, who was the Spanish conquistador? It's a different thing with it. One of the Spanish conquistadors, he decided he was going to, he said to his men, they literally burnt the ships. They had sailing
Okay.
ships.
So it wasn't him.
Cortez.
Okay,
Cortez, he
We're to give
literally
him
burned
the
the
mic.
ships.
okay.
So they all of Caesar's men knew that if they crossed the Rubicon with them, they were outlaws. So he made it very, very clear. But understand, this was their general. They'd fought for this man for 10 years under crazy, the loyalty was just out. It's crazy. And he is telling them, I am, legally, I'm being persecuted. I had the legal right to go back. So in all civil wars, that's because it's complicated for soldiers, right? Because their commander is saying, I have the authority, the legality to do whatever. And the soldier is kind of stuck in the middle.
So this is maybe a subject for a future presentation, but I'd love to find out how in the days before any modern communications, they're able to manage an empire so huge and so distant. So again, that probably couldn't do an entire lecture.
Oh yeah, I mean, logistically, think about it. A message could only travel as fast as the fastest horse or the fastest ship. So administratively, think of miscommunication now happens all the time. How about, I need to put together an order and you're not going to receive this order for 2 months. And God, we talk about the telephone game. Holy smokes, right? So absolutely, the command and control. That's why these things are fascinating. To build a bridge over the Rhine, you have saws and axes. How in the hell do you do that? I mean, in like a week, it's crazy. So there's genius in all this. It's nuts. Pardon me? Oh, lessons. Oh my gosh. The democracy is a fragile thing. It is a fragile thing, and there are those who would undermine it for their own, yeah. And the end of the Roman Republic is they're fascinating parallels. Oh my gosh. Any other questions? Well, thank you all for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, a few items to get through. Let me get through my stuff first. Last week's meeting, Tom had handouts. Those handouts now are on our website. So if you didn't get one, you can go to the website. And if you know folks that aren't in this meeting that didn't get one as well, they're on the website. Hudson Mart Sunday. Everybody should be there at the times that are slotted. Beer Garden is August 9th and August 10th. If you haven't signed up already, see Pat. Rotary Picnic is the 14th of August, 5:30 to 8 p.m. Bring a side dish and or a dessert, and the club will provide the main course. Also open for discussion is maybe we should reach out and invite the clock tower to join us that evening. The Rotary District Guardians outing is the 2nd of August. You can go online, I think, and buy the tickets if I'm not mistaken. Picnic is at Colony Park. Or Cascade, I'm sorry. What? Is it Cascade or Colony? It's Cascade Park. Am I the one that keeps calling it Colony? Maybe. 5:30. Got it. Yeah, there's a clipboard going around. And you have it now, Tom? Has it gone all the way around? And it'll go around next week's meeting. So, we'll catch up with everybody. Club meeting is the 7th of August, which is, I think, 2 weeks away. And a foundation meeting the 14th, even though that is the day of the picnic, the foundation will meet that morning. Also, just for your edification, Evan is currently working on adding the ability to pay your dues online. It isn't up and running just yet, kind of in the infancy of it, but he's already reached out to Ben and kind of talked about, how we would set this up. Right now, it would just be for dues, but as we mature into this, I mean, it's kind of odd. We sort of manage our finances like in the 19th century when we're in the 21st century, for goodness sakes. So at some point, you'll be able to do all of your finance through the online, but we're not there just yet. So baby steps. Has anyone driven by the cabin lately? There are flags below the US flag and then on the cabin itself for the Rotary Club of Hudson. So we have promoted not just the cabin, but we're promoting the club in of itself and the service work that we do in Hudson. And finally, the useless but important facts that everyone needs to know. You guys are going to be like super educated by next June. Everybody's heard the term jiffy? Back in a jiffy? It is an actual unit of time that is 1/100th of a second. So when you say you're going to be back in a jiffy, I don't think so. Anything else? Oh, Rotobucks. Tom already left, right? All right, Tom too?
Not conflicted.
You sure?
Okay.
We've done Rotobucks in a long time. All right, ticket number is ending in 2121. Any takers? Mr. Basil. It doesn't say, it doesn't say the amount in here. Oh, man, you were so. Oh.
That feels
And with that, we stand adjourned.